Hi, I'm Assemblyman Gerry Scharfenberger from Legislative District 13, and I'm on the reaction couch today to speak about critical race theory, otherwise known as diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm also a college professor where I teach in the Anthropology and History Department of Monmouth University, and it's one of my passions, and it's something I feel very strongly about, that it be done not only the right way, but effectively, so we really learn where we've come from, where we are, and where we're going to be going in the future.
Tony Jackson, a fourth grade teacher at Nellie K. Parker School in Hackensack, has never shied away from difficult topics in the classroom. A recent lesson on the scars of colonialism allowed his students to see the impact it still has today.
They connected it to the Capitol riots. They connected what's happening with the Capitol riots to privilege and how Black protesters were treated during 2020.
Jackson's teaching approach now getting a boost from the state. Governor Murphy signed a new bill into law mandating all school districts incorporate economic diversity, equity, and inclusion in connection with race, gender, and sexual orientation, among other things, within its curriculum.
One of the problems I have with this clip is that education or the school systems have gotten so far away from actual academics, where they've moved into the realm of opinion and personal feelings and things that really should not be taught by teachers, but better left to parents and preachers. This particular teacher is teaching fourth graders about colonialism. Now, fourth graders, it's one of the lower grades, and this is something that's very slanted and very, very given to personal opinion and not facts. One of the other sad things, and you see how they quietly slip this in, is where he brought up the January 6th riot in Washington, D.C., and is clearly a political angle to it, clearly trying to push kids in a certain direction and believing certain events were more egregious than others, and we can't have this.
I became an English teacher at Dwight Englewood School 7 years ago because as a parent, I loved how the school both nurtured and challenged my own children. But over the past few years, the school has embraced an ideology that is damaging to our students' intellectual and emotional growth, an ideology that requires students to see themselves not as individuals, but as representatives of either an oppressor or oppressed group.
She is 100% correct. We have this outrageous and ridiculous supposition of one group having so-called privilege and other groups not having that same privilege is absolutely absurd. It's not education, it's indoctrination, and it's something that we as parents and citizens must stand up to fight.
It shouldn't matter if you live in the city or suburbs, on a farm or a reservation, or what your zip code may be, but it does. There's still rules to keep our schools separate and unequal. Why?
This is outrageous, using a young lady like that to promote such divisive and untrue allegations. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you come from. We have success stories in this country across decades, even centuries, of people who have started out with nothing and become great successes from every walk of life, from rural areas, from suburbs, from city areas, from every corner of the nation. Every race, every gender, every ethnicity. There are stories abounding of people who've come to this country not speaking English, not with a penny in their pocket, who've become great successes. This is something we should champion and we should celebrate.
Critical race theory is not being taught in schools. It is a theory, it is a lens by which to view history and the way that law and race kind of overlaps and connects in society. Can it influence the way that some teachers teach? Yeah, but that's a good thing, right? Because race and racism is literally the building blocks of this country.
What she's saying is so ridiculous. It's hard to fathom that she's a teacher. She's a teacher teaching this nonsense. This supposition, this garbage that some people cook up in their minds as fact. It's just so hard to fathom how we've gotten that this is where teachers are. I think back to teachers I've had, they would be rolling in their graves now if they saw what passes for education. Racism is not the building blocks on which this country was built. Freedom and opportunity were the building blocks.
So there's a big difference between equality and equity. Equality suggests, oh, everyone should get the same amount. The problem with that, not everybody's starting out from the same place. So if we're all getting the same amount, but you started out back there and I started out over here, we could get the same amount, but you're still gonna be that far back behind me.
We are not getting the same amount. Same amount of what? Equality does not mean you all get the same amount. Equality means you have equal access to opportunity. That's it. That's what the Constitution guarantees us. That's what it has always guaranteed us. Now we make sure those guarantees are open to everybody. There's more laws than you can shake a stick at to ensure that there is no impediment to people reaching certain opportunities. This is absolutely outrageous. I don't know if folks like that are living 150 years ago, if they don't realize where we are and the strides we've made. It's a scary prospect to see people actually think this way.
When you think about equity, you also need to think about equality, because those terms are often used interchangeably. So when you think about equality, which is the end state that we want to achieve, or the equality of outcomes, think about equity as the route that we take to get there.
Now that's a frightening prospect because he's completely conflated the two. Equality to opportunity. In the Navy, everybody should have the same opportunity to enlist, to go through basic training, to be assigned to a ship or a base or whatever it may be. Equality to those opportunities. Equity is where everybody has the same. Everybody is the same, especially in the Navy. Everybody's not the same. There's all different ranks. There's all different sub-ranks. Once you're in that system, you should be able to rise to whatever rank your talents and desires and abilities will take you. One of the other frightening things that he said was equality of outcome. That's right out of Karl Marx. There's no equality of outcome. It just doesn't exist unless you keep it that way forcefully. And we don't want to go down that road. We don't want to go down that road where we make everybody wallow in mediocrity just to make everybody feel good that everybody has some sort of equity. Equality, that's what we have to look for. Equality to opportunity, and let the chips fall where they may.
I am proud to be the 17th Commanding General of the United States Army's Training and Doctrine Command. Here at TRADOC, we are committed to fostering an environment that promotes and practices diversity, equity, and inclusion.
This is one of the most frightening things I think I've ever heard, where we have a military recruiter. The first words out of his mouth are diversity, equity, inclusion. Nothing about patriotism, love of country, defending the homeland, nothing about that. These are distractions. We need a military force where everybody thinks they are one. They look past all of these petty differences. The military is not a social experiment. This is not an encounter group. They're there to win wars, win battles, and protect this country at all costs. You see that the generals are starting to become quasi-politicians, where they're more interested in getting a point across rather than winning wars and building the best military on earth. Stop with the social indoctrination and the nonsense that we see creeping into even the military.
We had some parents of every background talking about how toxic this is. You see it across the country. I mean, it is tearing communities apart. It's wrong. It should not be taught in schools. And we need to teach people the truth. We need to teach them about the history of this country. And that includes everything that's happened. But you can't lie and you can't promote your ideology and false narratives.
Governor DeSantis is 100% right. He hit the nail right on the head. As a college professor, my first class, I teach students that you cannot make judgments on people who lived 50, 100, 500, thousands of years ago on the way you look at things today. That's why this nonsense of tearing down statues of people who lived in a vastly different time is absolutely absurd. Changing the names of schools because somebody said something 150 years ago that you don't like today. We cannot force our judgment on folks who lived years ago. Nothing will ever measure up. We'll be tearing down statues every 10 years if that happens, because no one will ever measure up to the way we feel at the very present.
Shannon Cuddle is a non-binary individual serving on the Maplewood South Orange School Board.
But the really stronger point here is making sure that all school districts, regardless of a law, should be implementing inclusive curriculum to mirror the images of their students and families. Again, to teach tolerance, respect, and understanding.
Tolerance, respect, and understanding is all well and good. That's the purview of the parent and the preacher. In schools, we have moved so far away from true academics. There are countries in the world who are eating our academic lunch because we veered off into this feel-good nonsense that has nothing to do with academics, that's better left to the parents to teach morals, to teach respect, the preacher, rather than a geometry teacher teaching their version of morals. We have to get back to academics. We have to get back to basics in this country, or else we're going to be passed by countries who put more emphasis on true education, not indoctrination.
Lesson plans include teaching middle and high school kids about Nazis making gay concentration camp prisoners wear pink triangles, a biography of someone forced to undergo gay conversion therapy, and different pronouns used by gender-fluid people. The curriculum's interwoven across different subjects from language to social studies.
One of the unfortunate byproducts of trying to force-feed children diversity, equity, and inclusion is that many parents have had it. They're fed up. And I know there are hundreds in my district alone who've taken their kids out of schools. They're forming pods, they're doing home education, and all of these sort of things, which is going to have a very negative impact on the overall school system if this trend keeps up. The one thing you don't mess with is people's children and their future. And that's what we're seeing now. Thankfully, there are parents who are really taking initiative to do something about it. Boards of education meetings have attendance that we haven't seen in decades. And there are people speaking out, people who have told me they've never been involved. And the more people who get involved and the more people who make their voices heard, the better chance we have for saving future generations.
And the question I think the gentleman raises is whether or not we should look at bias, whether it's externalized or conscious bias or unconscious bias, or whether we should ignore unconscious bias. I say we should not ignore unconscious bias because we know that it works its way in disparate treatment and health care before our institutions right straight across our entire society.
Now, unconscious bias is one of those catch-alls that don't question it. You don't even know it's there, but we know it's there. And this is the sort of nonsense that drives a lot of legislation and bad legislation where people have to be protected from themselves, that government knows better. We know that there's something wrong with you, even if you can't see it or if it's not obvious. This is ridiculous. This is the kind of thing that we have to put a stop to, this sort of mentality that goes into legislating ghosts. And in the meantime, real issues, real important issues that are affecting everybody's life every day, issues that are driving people out of New Jersey, out of certain states to others, these things are being ignored in favor of this sort of jibber-jabber that really has no basis in fact. It's all supposition, it's all theory. We have to get back to basics in legislating, in education, and in our way of life. I'm so proud of this country. I'm so proud of the advancements we've made. I'm so proud of the opportunity we give to people of every color. We should be celebrating that. Stop CRT, stop teaching racism, and let our children embrace the opportunity that 1 million war dead have given to them throughout the years. This is something that's more important than all of us put together. I'm hoping fellow legislators would stand with me to put a stop to CRT and get behind my bill and pass it for the good of our students and for the good of our society. Let's bring people together. Let's make sure everybody has that opportunity. Let's stop teaching divisive ideology, hateful ideology, by people who just want to tear apart this country. We have the power to do it, and I think together we can do that and make this country even better than it is now.